It was a long Saturday afternoon at the local supermarket, and every checkout line stretched halfway down the aisles. The air conditioning wasn't doing much to fight the heat outside, and everyone was visibly tired. Kids fussing, people scrolling on their phones, and the hum of small talk mixing with the soft beep of scanners. I was standing in line, halfway through my patience, clutching a basket with just a few items: bread, eggs, milk, and a couple of vegetables. The person in front of me had a small cart too, and we were all quietly waiting our turn, shifting our weight from one foot to another. Just when things were finally starting to move, I saw her, the woman every retail worker dreads and every customer hopes not to encounter. She was probably in her late 40s, well-dressed, sunglasses perched on her head like she owned the place. Her cart was loaded to the brim: snacks, meat, bottles, cleaning supplies, you name it. She had the unmistakable look of someone who believed the rules didn't apply to her. As she pushed her overflowing cart toward the express checkout, my stomach sank. You could see everyone's eyes following her movement like a silent alarm had gone off. The sign above the register clearly said, 10 items or less. The cashier, a young guy who couldn't have been more than 20, was ringing up an older lady's groceries and clearly noticed her approach. His face tensed for just a second before returning to a polite smile. She rolled her cart right up to the line, cutting in front of me and the man ahead without so much as a glance. It wasn't even subtle. She just wedged her cart in like she belonged there, pretending we were invisible. The man in front of me took a deep breath and muttered something under his breath, shaking his head. I blinked in disbelief. "Excuse me," I said, trying to sound calm. "The line starts back there." She turned, her expression dripping with fake surprise. "Oh, I'm just in a hurry," she said, her tone casual, as if that somehow made it acceptable. "It's just a few things." She gestured toward her mountain of groceries as if we couldn't see it. I stared at her cart. It looked like she'd stocked up for a family of 10. "Ma'am, that's not a few things," I replied, trying to keep my voice even. "Everyone here's been waiting." Her lips tightened, and she gave a small, dismissive laugh. "Sweetheart, I've got somewhere to be. You'll survive waiting 2 more minutes." She said it loud enough for the surrounding people to hear, as if daring anyone to challenge her. The guy in front of me turned fully around now, arms crossed, glaring at her. "Lady," he said bluntly, "we've all got places to be. Get in line like everyone else." That's when she gave the classic entitled person response, the deep sigh, the exaggerated eye roll, and the under-the-breath comment meant to make her seem like the victim. "Unbelievable," she muttered. "People are so rude these days." The cashier froze, unsure what to do. You could see the internal debate on his face. Should he confront her, or risk a complaint to management? Before he could say anything, the older lady he was helping turned her head slowly toward Karen and spoke in a calm but firm tone. "Young lady, if you can't follow simple rules, maybe you shouldn't be shopping in public." The entire line went silent. The words hung in the air like a slap. Karen blinked, clearly not used to being talked to like that. Her face flushed a little, but she quickly tried to recover her smug composure. "I'm sorry, but I'm really in a rush," she insisted again. The older lady wasn't buying it. "So are we. That's why we got here before you." The people behind me started nodding. You could feel a wave of quiet agreement building, everyone tired of being polite to people like her. I could see Karen starting to fidget slightly, scanning the crowd for someone to back her up, but nobody did. Even the cashier cleared his throat and said carefully, "Ma'am, this is the express lane. I can't ring up a full cart here. You'll have to move to one of the regular lines." Her jaw dropped slightly, as if she couldn't believe someone was actually enforcing the rule. "You're seriously not going to check me out?" she demanded, voice rising. He shook his head, trying to stay professional. "I'm sorry, but store policy says 10 items or less. The other lanes are open." Karen's face turned red, not from embarrassment yet, but from sheer indignation. "This is ridiculous. I shop here every week. I spend hundreds of dollars here," she snapped, as if that somehow gave her immunity from the rules. The man in front of me chuckled quietly. "Then you should know how the lines work by now." That earned him a death glare, but it didn't help her case. She stood there, gripping her cart handle, visibly debating whether to throw a tantrum or walk away. You could almost see the calculation in her eyes. Was the public humiliation worth proving she was right? The silence around her only made it worse. No one looked away. No one defended her. Finally, she huffed loudly, muttering, "This is why this place is going downhill," and began shoving her cart backward, almost running into a display of chips. She turned the corner sharply and disappeared toward the regular lanes. The moment she was gone, the collective tension in the air broke. A few people let out quiet laughs, and someone clapped under their breath. The older lady just shook her head. "Some people think the world revolves around them," she said softly. The cashier smiled a little and continued scanning. "Thanks for being patient, everyone." When it was finally my turn, he gave me a small grin and said, "Guess you saw that one coming." I laughed. "Yeah, there's always one." He nodded knowingly. At least she didn't throw a fit this time. As I paid and gathered my things, I glanced toward the other end of the store. Karen was still in line, a long one this time, tapping her foot furiously and glaring at her phone. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. When I left the store, I noticed her again outside, loading her groceries into a fancy SUV, still muttering to herself. She caught me looking and shot me a glare like it was somehow my fault things didn't go her way. I just smiled, pushed my cart to the return area, and walked away. Later, I couldn't help but post about it online. People loved the story, especially the part where the cashier and the older woman stood their ground. Everyone had their own entitled shopper story, it seemed, and this one hit a nerve. Maybe, I thought, the next time someone like her tries to cut in line, she'll remember this moment. But knowing how these Karens operate, she probably won't. A few days later, the same grocery store found itself packed again. It was late afternoon, and the weekend crowd had already begun filling the aisles. I stopped by after work to grab a few essentials, not expecting anything eventful. But sometimes, the universe just loves running reruns of bad behavior, and that's exactly what I got. I was halfway through the produce section, picking out some apples, when I spotted her again. The same woman, the one who'd tried to cut in the express lane with a full cart. Karen. Her hair was perfectly styled, her oversized sunglasses perched on top again like a crown of entitlement. She had another massive cart, this time full of fancy organic items. It was clear she hadn't learned a single thing. I debated pretending I didn't see her, but curiosity won out. I wanted to see if she'd try the same stunt again. I moved along at my own pace, keeping a casual eye on her as she made her way toward the front. Sure enough, she began glancing around, scanning the lines like she was calculating the fastest route. The regular lanes were long. The express lanes were short. You could see the gears turning in her head. I sighed to myself. Not again. When she started pushing her cart toward the express lane, I knew what was coming. Only this time, she wasn't going to have the same luck. The cashier there wasn't the young guy from before. It was a middle-aged woman named Dana, the kind of cashier who had clearly been working there long enough to recognize every type of shopper. Dana had that no-nonsense aura about her, the kind of person who could smile politely while shutting down nonsense with a single sentence. Karen rolled up confidently, bypassing the waiting customers again. She even pretended to look confused, as if she wasn't sure which lane she was in. "Oh, I'll just be quick," she announced to no one in particular, sliding her cart forward. A man holding a basket of just 2 items gave a short laugh. "Sure you will," he muttered. Dana immediately noticed the full cart and raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am," she said in a steady voice, "this is the express lane, 10 items or less." Karen looked up with that familiar fake innocence. "Oh, I know," she replied, waving dismissively. "I just have a few things." Dana leaned slightly forward, eyeing the mountain of groceries. "Ma'am, I count over 40 items. I can't ring that up here." Karen's lips pursed. "Are you serious?" "I'm in a hurry." Dana didn't even flinch. So is everyone else here. The people in line began nodding and whispering. Karen's eyes darted toward them, then back at Dana. "I don't have time to stand in that long line," she protested, gesturing toward the regular checkout. "Then maybe plan your shopping better," a man behind her said flatly. His voice was calm but firm, and the quiet laughter that followed only made Karen's face turn redder. She glared at him, then looked back at Dana. "You know, I'm a regular customer here. I spend a lot of money every week. Dana folded her arms. And we appreciate that. But the rules don't change for anyone. Please move to another register. Karen's mouth fell open like she'd been personally insulted. Unbelievable. You people are so rude. I've never been treated like this in my life. A woman behind me, clearly tired of the scene, spoke up. Then maybe start acting like everyone else, and you won't be treated differently. That hit a nerve. Karen turned sharply toward her, eyes narrowed. Excuse me. The woman didn't back down. You heard me. The rest of us are following the rules. You're not special. The silence that followed was almost theatrical. Karen's face went pale, her jaw tight. The cashier kept standing there patiently, waiting for her to move, while the rest of us stood quietly, united by silent judgment. Finally, Karen huffed dramatically, muttering something about terrible service and calling corporate. She shoved her cart backward again, narrowly missing a display of cereal boxes. Dana just smiled calmly and said, "Thank you, ma'am. Have a nice day." The collective sigh from the line was almost in sync. Everyone relaxed, and a few people even chuckled under their breath. The man in front of me said, "You'd think she'd learn after the last time." I smiled, replying quietly, "Some people just never do." Dana overheard and laughed. "You've seen her before, huh?" "Oh yeah," I said. "She tried the same thing last week." Dana shook her head with a grin. "We get a few of those every now and then. They think they can talk their way out of anything." I paid for my groceries, and as I left, I saw Karen again, this time standing in the customer service area, complaining loudly to a manager. Her voice carried across the store, "Your employees are rude and disrespectful." I was humiliated in front of everyone. The manager, looking exhausted, nodded politely but didn't seem very sympathetic. "Ma'am," he said gently, "the express lane policy is clear. 10 items or less. We have to be fair to all customers." Karen's voice rose. "Fair? I've been shopping here for years. I expect better treatment." The manager gave a polite but firm nod. "We appreciate your loyalty, but everyone waits their turn." For a second, Karen just stood there, fuming. Then she turned sharply, grabbed her cart, and stormed off toward the parking lot. Her heels clicked aggressively against the tile floor, echoing through the store. As I walked out a few moments later, I caught sight of her again outside. She was loading her groceries into the same fancy SUV, angrily slamming the trunk. She glanced around and noticed a few people who had been in line with her walking past. Every single one of them ignored her. It was a strange sort of justice, not the loud, dramatic kind, but the quiet kind that stings more because no one's paying attention anymore. She'd embarrassed herself twice now, and everyone had seen it. When I got home, I couldn't resist updating my post from the week before. I wrote, "Update, entitled shopper tried the same stunt again. Different cashier, same outcome." Some people really can't take a hint. The responses were immediate. Thousands of people commenting, laughing, and sharing similar stories. One comment said, "Karen needs to collect loyalty points for embarrassment at this point." Another wrote, "Every grocery store has one of these. It's like a natural law." Reading those comments made me realize something. It wasn't just about one woman cutting in line. It was about respect. Everyone's time matters, no matter how much money they spend or what they think they deserve. Karen had all the money in the world, but not enough self-awareness to see how ridiculous she looked. That night, as I scrolled through the responses, I couldn't help but wonder if she'd ever stumble upon the post and recognize herself. Probably not. People like her rarely believe they're the problem. But still, I smiled, imagining the look on her face if she ever did. The following week, life moved on as usual. I didn't think much about the supermarket incident anymore. It had become one of those funny stories you tell to friends over dinner. But as luck or irony would have it, fate wasn't quite done with Karen yet. That Sunday morning, I went to the same store early to beat the weekend rush. The sun had barely risen, and the parking lot was still half empty. The store smelled like fresh bread, and the calm quiet was a welcome change from the usual chaos. I grabbed a small cart and started down the aisles, minding my own business. It was peaceful. Too peaceful. Until I heard a familiar voice echoing from 2 aisles over. "Excuse me." This coupon says it's valid. I froze. That tone. That dramatic, drawn-out insistence. It couldn't be, but of course it was. Karen. I peeked around the corner of the aisle, and there she was, same sunglasses, same entitled posture, and the same air of superiority. This time, she was arguing with a teenage employee at the customer service counter. Apparently, her coupon had expired, but she was determined to make it valid through sheer force of will. It's only 2 days expired, she snapped, slapping the paper on the counter. You can still accept it. Other stores do. The poor kid looked mortified. I'm sorry, ma'am, he stammered. Our system doesn't allow it. It automatically rejects expired coupons. Karen leaned closer, lowering her voice like she was delivering a threat. Well, then override it. I spend a lot of money here. He blinked nervously. I don't have permission to do that. Then get someone who does, she barked. This is ridiculous. I watched as the employee reluctantly picked up the phone and paged the manager. Within moments, Dana, the same no-nonsense cashier from last week, walked over, her expression unreadable but calm. What seems to be the issue, ma'am? She asked. Karen immediately switched gears, feigning sweetness. Hi, yes, I was just trying to use this coupon. It's only 2 days expired, and your cashier here is refusing to honor it. Dana took the coupon, scanned it, and looked at the date. Ma'am, this expired on Tuesday. I'm afraid we can't accept it. Karen's polite mask slipped instantly. What's the big deal? It's 2 days. It's policy, Dana replied evenly. The register won't process it, and we don't make manual exceptions. Karen's voice began to rise again. Well, maybe you should. I'm a loyal customer. I spend hundreds here every week. Don't you care about that? Dana stayed calm. Of course we care, but the policy applies to everyone. The moment she said that, a small crowd began forming nearby, people pretending to browse but clearly listening in. It was like watching a live sequel to the previous week's drama. You could sense everyone silently rooting for Dana again. Karen, meanwhile, was spiraling. Her arms were crossed, and her face was turning red. You know what? This is unacceptable. I've never been treated with such disrespect. I'll take my business somewhere else. Dana nodded politely, completely unshaken. That's your choice, ma'am. Have a great day. That simple, calm response seemed to push Karen over the edge. You'll regret this, she snapped, pointing dramatically like she was delivering the final line in a soap opera. You've just lost a loyal customer. Dana smiled faintly. I think we'll manage. The bystanders tried not to laugh, but a few snickers escaped. Karen glared around at everyone, realizing she'd become the morning's entertainment yet again. With an angry huff, she snatched her purse from her cart, left the groceries behind, and stomped toward the door. Her exit would have been more dramatic if she hadn't tripped slightly on the mat near the entrance. She caught herself quickly, but the stumble made the moment painfully awkward. She looked back as if daring anyone to comment, but the crowd had already dispersed, returning to their shopping like nothing had happened. As the automatic doors slid shut behind her, Dana sighed and turned to the young employee. You okay? He nodded, still wide-eyed. Yeah. I've seen customers get mad before, but that was something else. Dana chuckled softly. You'll get used to it. That woman's been pulling stunts here for months. I think she believes we'll bend the rules if she yells loud enough. I walked up to the counter with my small basket, unable to resist saying, She's the same lady who tried to cut in the express lane last week. Dana laughed. I figured. There's always one. We shared a knowing smile. I paid for my groceries and headed toward the exit, passing the parking lot just in time to see Karen sitting in her SUV, talking animatedly on her phone, probably complaining to someone about how she'd been mistreated. The irony was, everyone she yelled at had stayed calm, polite, and professional. She was the only one turning every small inconvenience into a battle. Over the next few days, my story about her coupon meltdown gained even more traction online. People couldn't believe how far she was willing to go just to save a couple of dollars. Comments poured in, some hilarious, some empathetic toward the employees. One person wrote, Karen's spending more emotional energy on that coupon than the savings are worth. Another said, She's the final boss of expired coupons. It was all lighthearted fun, but a few people made good points too. They talked about how service workers deal with these types of customers daily, people who believe that shouting makes them right. Reading those comments gave me a new respect for retail employees. It's not easy keeping calm when someone's yelling at you over something so trivial. A week passed, and I thought that would be the end of my Karen trilogy. But, as the saying goes, third time's the charm, and she wasn't done embarrassing herself just yet. It was a quiet Tuesday evening when I stopped by the same store again to grab a few snacks. The place was calm, no rush, no long lines. As I walked toward the back of the store, I noticed a small commotion near the self-checkout area. Curious, I peeked around the shelves. And there she was again. Karen. This time, she was arguing with the self-checkout machine itself. Apparently, the scanner wasn't reading one of her items properly, and instead of asking for help, she decided to berate the nearest employee, a young woman in her early 20s. "Your machines don't work," she snapped. "I've been standing here for 5 minutes, and it won't scan this stupid barcode." The employee smiled politely. "I can help you with that, ma'am," she said, stepping closer and scanning the item for her. Karen folded her arms. "I shouldn't have to ask for help. What's the point of self-checkout if it doesn't work?" The employee kept calm. "I understand, but sometimes the stickers get smudged. It happens." Karen wasn't satisfied. "You people need to maintain your equipment better. Every time I come here, something goes wrong." At this point, I couldn't help but chuckle softly from where I stood. She truly was her own worst enemy. The young employee finished scanning the item, bagged it, and said, "All set, ma'am. You can complete the payment." Karen huffed, paid quickly, and stormed off without even saying thank you. As she left, the employee turned toward me and smiled awkwardly, clearly relieved it was over. I smiled back. "You handled that perfectly." She laughed quietly. "You learn to stay calm. People like her come in almost every day." I nodded. "Yeah, I've noticed." It was almost poetic how Karen kept returning, each time creating a new scene and leaving in embarrassment. She never seemed to realize that her own attitude was the problem. By the time I left that night, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of amusement and pity. Some people just couldn't stand being treated like everyone else. They needed to feel above the rules, and when reality didn't bow to them, they crumbled. Karen had become a legend at that store, not for her shopping habits, but for her outbursts. Employees started referring to her in hushed tones as Express Lane Lady. Every new worker was warned, "If she walks in, just stay calm and let Dana handle it." Little did anyone know, she was about to give them one last unforgettable performance. It was about 2 weeks later when the final act of the Karen saga unfolded. The entire supermarket staff and most of the regulars had heard about her by now. She'd earned quite the reputation, not the kind anyone wanted, but one that stuck. The Express Lane Lady, Coupon Queen, and even Barcode Bandit were a few of the nicknames floating around. Every time she appeared, employees braced themselves like storm watchers spotting a tornado on the horizon. I wasn't expecting to see her again, honestly. It was late afternoon on a Friday, and the place was busy but not overwhelming. I just wanted to grab a few things for the weekend and get out. As I moved toward the checkout area, I saw a familiar, overly confident stride coming from the bakery section. Karen was back, dressed sharply as ever, her hair perfect, her cart overflowing as usual. This time, though, there was something new in her attitude. She looked determined, like she was out for redemption, or maybe revenge. She walked right past the regular lanes, past the self-checkout area, and straight toward, you guessed it, the express line. A ripple of disbelief went through the nearby shoppers. You could see heads turning, whispers starting. People who'd been there for her previous stunts looked ready for a show. I took my place a few registers away, pretending to browse gum but keeping my eyes on her. The cashier today was a young man named Chris, new, by the looks of it. He was cheerful, probably too new to know what he was about to deal with. Karen rolled her cart right up, completely bypassing the waiting customers. "Hi there," she chirped with forced brightness. "I just need to check out quickly." "I'm in a rush." Chris blinked, glancing from her overflowing cart to the big sign overhead that read, 10 items or less. Ma'am," he began carefully, This is the express lane. Oh, I know, she interrupted smoothly. But I only have a few things that need to be rung up right away. The rest I'll handle later. Chris frowned politely. I'm sorry, but I can only process up to 10 items here. Her smile tightened. I said I'll just do a few for now. At this point, the woman behind her crossed her arms and said, We're all in a hurry too, lady. Get in line like the rest of us. Karen turned around sharply. Mind your own business, she snapped. This will only take a second. Chris looked unsure. You could tell he didn't want to cause a scene. But before he could say anything else, Dana, the veteran cashier, spotted the unfolding drama from 2 lanes down. She exchanged a knowing glance with the manager, who subtly nodded. Dana calmly approached, clipboard in hand. Hi again, she said pleasantly, though there was a clear edge of authority in her tone. Karen's eyes narrowed. You again. Dana smiled faintly. Yes, me again. Ma'am, this lane is for 10 items or less. You'll have to move your cart to a regular line. Karen's patience was already frayed. I've had enough of this nonsense, she said sharply. I've shopped here for years, and I won't be told where to stand. Dana stayed composed. We appreciate your business, but we have to treat everyone equally. Karen scoffed loudly. Equally? Please. Half these people don't even spend a fraction of what I do here. The crowd audibly reacted to that. A few gasps, a couple of disbelieving chuckles. One man muttered, Money doesn't buy manners. Karen spun toward him. Excuse me? I don't need a lecture from strangers. By now, the manager had walked over, calm and collected. He was a tall man named Marcus, known for his patient demeanor. Ma'am, he said, we've asked you multiple times to follow store policy. If this continues, we'll have to ask you to leave. Karen laughed mockingly. Leave? For trying to check out? You've got to be joking. Marcus didn't waver. Not at all. This is the 3rd time you've caused a disruption at the registers. We can't allow that. You could feel the shift in the room. Shoppers had gone silent, watching the confrontation like it was live theater. Even the kids in the nearby candy aisle had stopped moving. Karen's confidence began to crack. You can't ban me. I'm a paying customer. Marcus's voice stayed calm but firm. Being a paying customer doesn't give you permission to disregard store policies or disrespect employees. For a split second, you could see the realization hit her that this was serious. Her face flushed red again, her lips trembling as she tried to find something to say. Then came the breaking point. You know what? Fine, she shouted. If you don't want my money, I'll take it somewhere else. This store is trash anyway. Marcus gave a polite nod. That's your choice, ma'am. Have a good day. The people in line started whispering. A few clapped quietly, which only made Karen more flustered. She yanked her cart backward, nearly running into a display of bottled water. One of the bottles toppled over and rolled away as she stormed toward the exit. The automatic doors opened, and with one final huff, she disappeared into the parking lot, her cart rattling behind her. The silence she left behind was glorious. A beat passed, then the entire line burst into quiet laughter and applause. Someone said, I didn't think she'd ever learn. Another joked, 3rd time's the charm, huh? Chris looked stunned. Does this happen often? Dana patted him on the shoulder. Only when she comes in. The laughter that followed broke the last bit of tension. Everyone's mood lifted instantly, like the whole store had collectively exhaled. A few minutes later, as I was checking out, I looked toward the windows. Through the glass, I could see Karen outside, struggling to push her overloaded cart up the slight incline toward her SUV. The front wheel jammed, and she had to wrestle with it. Then, to everyone's silent amusement, one of her grocery bags split open, spilling apples onto the pavement. She stood there for a moment, visibly fuming, then began picking them up one by one, muttering under her breath. It wasn't the kind of punishment anyone could plan. It was simple, poetic karma at work. When I walked out with my own small bag of groceries, she was just finishing loading her car. She shot me a quick glare, probably recognizing me from before. I gave her a polite smile and kept walking. That night, I posted the final update online. Final chapter. Karen tried cutting again. Got banned from the store. Even gravity joined the fight this time. Apples everywhere. The post blew up overnight. Thousands of comments poured in, people laughing, sharing their own Karen moments, and praising the employees for standing their ground. The top comment read, "You can't buy respect, but karma gives discounts." It made me realize how universal this type of behavior was, and how satisfying it felt when ordinary people stood up for decency and fairness. Everyone had encountered someone like her at some point, someone who believed the rules didn't apply to them, that their time mattered more than others. A few weeks later, when I returned to the store again, things were peaceful. The lines were normal, the cashiers were smiling, and there was no chaos near the express lane. It felt balanced again. Dana recognized me and grinned. "Hey, haven't seen you in a bit. No drama today." I chuckled. "Guess the storm finally moved on." She laughed. "Yeah, management actually told us she's not welcome back. If she tries again, security's supposed to escort her out." I raised an eyebrow. "So it's official?" "Official," she said, smiling proudly. "We even have a note by the register that says 10 items or less, no exceptions." I couldn't help but laugh. "Good. Maybe she'll finally learn something." Dana smirked. "Some people never do, but at least we won't have to find out." As I left the store that day, the air felt lighter, calmer. It wasn't just about groceries or lines. It was about the small victories that restore your faith in people. It reminded me that patience and boundaries go hand in hand, and that sometimes standing firm against entitlement doesn't just help one person, it sets an example for everyone watching. And as I drove home, I couldn't help but grin at the thought that somewhere out there, Karen was probably at another store, trying the same old trick, and hopefully finding another Dana ready to put her back in her place. Because in the end, no matter how many times she tried to cut the line, karma always made sure she walked away in shame.